Have you heard of Henry Lee Lucas? I hadn't, but thanks to the Netflix documentary The Confession Killer, I now know all about him. Or do I? If injustice riles you up, then this documentary is going to get your blood boiling. If you watch my channel on any kind of a regular basis, you know I'm a huge fan of true crime, and we watch a lot of that in our house. Well, that exposes me to a lot of the corruption in the justice systems, especially in other countries. But this time, it's happening right here in the United States. Lucas was known as America's most prolific serial killer, attributing over 360 murders to him. And through his confessions, he was transported all across the country in order to close cases or at least confess to murders in a whole bunch of other states and cities outside of Texas where he was arrested and being held. And when he went to these other cities, when he talked to these other law enforcement agencies, he was able to provide tiny bits of detail here and there to the crimes, allowing them to close them and think, okay, he's the perpetrator, he's the one who did it, case closed, moving on. At some point though, his confessions begin to be called into question, at least in their truthfulness. And that's where the drama of this documentary really picks up speed. The documentary is only 5 episodes long, and each of them are about 45 minutes, but every single one of them, as it goes along, it's going to frustrate you, anger you, even leave you scratching or shaking your head at law enforcement and the decisions that are being made. I really enjoyed that some of the episodes leave us with cliffhangers, like they tease us and then boom, right into the credits. But thankfully, because this is Netflix, I can just right back into the next episode and away I go. So I don't have to have that suspense looming over me for too long. Now, at the beginning of the series, in the first episode or two, admittedly, I was very frustrated, especially at the documentarians, because I felt that they were leaving questions or comments just hanging, that people would say something and in their interviews and they wouldn't answer it, they wouldn't address it. Now, in true documentary form, they're not actually doing an investigative type of thing. They're not, as a reporter, like trying to dig into details. They're just telling the story of what is, at least in how it's edited. But I'm happy to say that by the end of it, almost all of my questions, almost all of my frustrations at what I felt were left hanging were resolved. That it did wrap itself up, so I wasn't left just going, well, what about this or what about this? Well, I was, but not because of what the documentarians actually did or how they edited it. It was just in the case itself where some of the answers are just unknown even to this day. There is a large sense of injustice to the families and the victims that's brought to light through this documentary. But it does leave us with a bit of hope as it wraps up, especially because now we have the technology and just the improvements and the advances in scientific discovery, especially as it relates to the criminal justice system. I loved all the interviews that they were able to capture and just put it together with news footage dating back from the 70s all the way up until very recently. And it provides a well-rounded picture. Now again, it's gonna frustrate you. The story is just the way that it develops and the way that it unfolds is annoying, or it's aggravating. It's just angering because it's not right. That things were happening that shouldn't have been happening, and yet they were allowed to. Now, if you've not heard of Lucas before, then you'll probably find this to be very interesting and very intriguing. But if you have heard of them, hopefully this documentary will shed new light and just open up new avenues of thinking for you so that you can just dive more into the mystery and just more of who he was and what went on. Well, admittedly, I probably won't watch this again. That doesn't mean that it wasn't entertaining or interesting. It was wildly both. I got a lot of information out of it. I just was sucked into the story and truly kept binging it because I needed to know more. I wanted to find out what was going on. The story was just that enveloping and intriguing and drew me in. There isn't any sex, but there is descriptions of sexual violence, some nudity, a lot of profanity, and violent images. I give The Confession Killer 4.5 out of 5 couches. Do you like true crime shows or documentaries? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.